Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good afternoon, Dean Enrique Leta, Professor Bertrand Badi, dear students, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to all of you. It's nearly almost 40 years since Afghanistan started to go into different phases of challenges. It started with the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan, continued with the terrorism invasion of Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda and other groups. And as a result, our people have suffered more than their share. The end of Cold War, where Europe was witness to bringing the Berlin Wall down, it was also, Afghanistan also had its share in the struggle against the Soviet Empire and Soviet invasion of the country, and also liberation of a lot of countries around us. And when the Soviets invaded our country, I was a student in the Faculty of Medicine. At that time, more worried about our lessons than the geopolitics, but then geopolitics took over and country was invaded, and at that time I decided that my destiny might be politics. While I liked medicine as a subject of my choice, but then the rest of the events was not in my control. And then I was part of the resistance against the Soviets, later on in the government in Kabul, and then resistance against Taliban and Al-Qaeda in the past 17 years, earlier as the foreign minister, later on as the opposition leader, now as the chief executive. What is happening in Afghanistan is not, in most cases, it's not something made by us, but rather conditions imposed upon us. While I mentioned about the suffering of the people as a result of different upheavals in the country, millions of people became refugees in the neighboring countries and abroad. 2001, post-September 11th, there was an opportunity. There was an opportunity for Afghanistan, and the international community started its engagement in our country. Some of you may remember or may know that prior to September 11th, in the September the 9th, the resistance leader, late Ahmad Shah Massoud, was assassinated by Al-Qaeda in a suicidal attack. And that was perhaps one of the first suicidal attacks ever. And prior to that, he was in Paris, he was in France and Belgium, and he warned the whole world that Al-Qaeda is developing strength in Afghanistan and posing a danger to the whole world. And let's do something in establishing peace in our country. I was accompanying late Ahmad Shah Massoud during his visit here in 2001, April 2001. I mentioned about 2001 and the start of the political process. As a result, the people of Afghanistan started their new phase of life. We have a constitutional order today based on democratic values, respect for human and gender rights, freedom of media, freedom of expression, access to education, healthcare, social and economic reforms, private sector, civil society developing, and things which just started with the opportunity post 2001. And we have been involved in rebuilding state institutions and also in reconstruction of the country. Many countries have helped Afghanistan, including France, with blood and treasure. sacrifices have been made alongside our people in rebuilding our country. And still the international community is engaged in our country, supporting the efforts of the people of Afghanistan. Still, some of the challenges are as big as you may imagine, because the main challenge was that we have to build, defend, and protect against those who destroy and kill at the same time. These forces under different names. Talking about terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda, you are aware of Daesh as well, though Daesh is not in big numbers in our country, but still it's posing a threat to peace and stability. While the security challenges are there, but at the same time, in different fields of life, the people of Afghanistan had their own achievements. Our GDP is more than 8 times higher than it was in 2001, and the same level of growth in the numbers of schools, boys and girls going to school, while at one stage it was none as far as girls were concerned. Average life expectancy has gone up from 54 to 64 years, and from 56 to 64 years. Our annual growth rate is increasing, and more women in public life, in the private sector, in the politics and society are active today than any other stage in our past history. The Afghan people desire to see change and see positive change in their lives, supported by the international community, which we are grateful to the international community for their generous support. We are striving to rebuild and develop, while at the same time continue to address the challenges which we are faced with. Afghanistan has much potential for self-reliance in terms of its economy. Afghanistan is rich in natural resources. Our location as a land bridge between Central Asia and South Asia, it's an important location, and countries around Afghanistan can benefit from stabilization of the country. A lot has happened in terms of connectivity between us and our neighbors, and while at the same time we still have challenges with some of our neighbors which provide sanctuaries for the Taliban or the groups which are using violence against our people. And our unique location to turn our geographical situation into a land bridge between South Asia and Central Asia. It's not just as a theory today. A lot is happening today. There are projects, energy projects, electricity projects, rail and roads projects, which are connecting different countries of the region through Afghanistan. And the challenges that we are faced with for any other situation or any other country or nation, it will be called overwhelming challenges. But our attitude has been that to deal with it where it is and continue with the efforts to rebuild our country and turn Afghanistan into a place or a country which is in peace within and without, and can contribute, not only can benefit from peace and stability in its own country, but also can contribute to stability in the region and also to the economic well-being of lots of people around us. And political stability is our fundamental concern, and our focus is to make sure that our young democracy takes stronger roots in the society and becomes foundation for stable Afghanistan, which its people live in a just and fair system under the rule of law with equal rights, men and women. Last month, we had parliamentary elections. As Dean Letta mentioned earlier, there will be presidential elections next year in April. And at the same time, efforts are underway to support the peace process. So far, unfortunately, Taliban have rejected the idea of peace or negotiations. With the renewed efforts from some members of the international community, at this stage the United States, we hope that there will be an opportunity for Taliban to get together with our representatives and talk about the future of the country free of violence and terror. And we hope that those Taliban who want to be part of the new Afghanistan, cutting their ties with the terrorist groups and giving up violence, will choose to become part of the political process and fight for their ideas politically rather than through violence and working together with the terrorist groups. As far as Afghanistan is concerned, there have been many lessons from our recent history. One lesson is that conflict and war need to be followed up with investment in seeking a political settlement. And political settlement as well as reconstruction to avoid creating a vacuum can then be used to threaten security as it happened in 1990s. The other lesson is that all effort and strategies used to fight terrorism and extremism need long-term solutions involving all stakeholders to be consistent, coordinated, and sustainable. At the same time, in the efforts to achieve peace, it is imperative that Afghans are in driving seat. At this stage, we appreciate the efforts made by the U.S. envoy and its team in facilitating talks between Taliban and the Afghan government representatives. At the same time, our people have made big sacrifices to have the achievements that I mentioned before, including certain freedoms and liberties and their rights. These will not be compromised under any circumstances because it will not lead to sustainable peace. The absolute majority of the people of Afghanistan, they want peace. They want durable peace and just peace. And we as the government, we represent that view and we are ready to talk and start negotiations. Personally, for me, to be here in Paris, to be in France, and especially in this very credible, historical SciencesPo, which has played a big role in politics in Europe and global politics, also has produced many statesmen and women and leaders in different walks of life. It's a joy for me to be here. And then being among students, it reminds me of quite a few decades ago when I was a student, but you are living in a different world today. The challenges are never smaller. If it was, it keeps changing its nature. It's the drive of human beings. It's that energy, that hidden energy unleashed that makes addressing those challenges easier, and also with the hope that we leave better legacies or better situations for the future generations. Today's challenges, I mentioned in the context of Afghanistan, security was the main challenge, but it's also climate, it's also inequality, it's also violation against women especially. There are many challenges, but I'm sure that how to use technology and how to keep pace with it, with the changes which are taking place, how to avoid extremist ideas and reject extremist ideologies in whatever context it is, if it is in a political context, religious or any other way. These are the things that I'm sure will keep the minds of the younger generation preoccupied, but not just preoccupied, but drives them to find solutions and contribute and attribute to lasting solutions. Once again, thank you for the opportunity, and very happy to be here. Thank you.